Hello guys, today we are going to talk about this keyword, inside functions and nested functions, right? The function in the second level. Let's get started. Okay, so let's look at our scenario or example here. We have a function called my function, and we're going to pass in a parameter name into our function, okay? And then we're going to say this dot default name is equal to Bobby. Let's say it's a default name, okay? And then we console log name, which we take the parameter name, and we console log this name is, and then we say this default name. And then we call the function and we pass in Joe as a name. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Okay, let's run this function. Let's see what's the function. Okay, here we go. And we have console log name equal to Joe, and this name is Bobby, right? This default name is Bobby here. Okay, so yes, you can see we are running this code not in strict mode. So therefore, this keyword is referring to a global object, right? So in this particular example, we are running this inside Node.js, right? So if you're running this inside the window client console, you get the window object for this. But in Node.js, you pretty much just get an empty object for this, okay? Just as imagine that we have a, empty object. Okay, now, so what is this line doing? Line number 4 right here, it says this dot default name is equal to Bobby. This keyword right here is actually referring to the node object, which is the empty object, right? So we created an object that say, well, we did not create an object. We create a property for the empty object called default name, and we are calling it here. Okay. Now, look at the magic here. What if we run this in strict mode? Now, remember, use strict is that it prevents you to access any undeclared variable. In our case, our undeclared variable is our global object, right? So what we're gonna run here is okay. Looks what happened here. So in this line that say this default name equal to Bobby, it says cannot set property default name of undefined, right? Because this now it does not refer to any global object under strict mode. Okay, I have a tutorial on strict mode. You can check it out later. But anyways, for this function's sake, this keyword now points to undefined. So when I set undefined that default name equal to Bobby, it's gonna yell at me, right? Yeah, Node.js will yell at me. And then we have console log here. This is not gonna work as well because, like I said, it's undefined because we only calling the function. We are not as wrapping it in assigning to an object. We're not calling against an object. There's no object in this file right here in the strict mode. Okay. Okay, let's say that I do want to use this right here, and I want to use it there like this, right? I want to have a default name like that. Okay, well, one thing we can do that is that instead of calling the function like this, just straight up like function like this, we can declare a variable for that, right? So let's say we have a I don't know, me. Okay, no, not me. Let's say person. Okay, let person equal to an empty object, right? Just like that, just like that. And then we could say, so we're gonna use a call function here, right? So my function dot call, right? Remember, the call function is pretty much just binding the function this into the object that we have here. So the first parameter takes in is the object itself, right? And then the second parameter is the function's parameter, which is our name. So my function is a function, we assign a call function to it, and then we bind to this object person, and then the next parameter we're gonna put in whatever parameter the my function has, which is our name, right? So let's say my name is I don't know, Joe. Sure, it's a good name. All right. So let's say that. Now clear my console, and then we run the function again. Look at that. Okay, what's happening here? So this is defined, right? Inside this function is now defined because the way we call it. This keyword in JavaScript, this keyword in JavaScript is always referring to the object that's being called upon, right? So this is basically a function. This function is, in this sense, it's not an object, but this will refer to whatever is being bind or called to it. So we define an object here. Let person equal to empty object. So a person now is an object in JavaScript, and then we use to call function to bind my function to the person object. All right. So now this in this function now is referring to that person object. Okay. I mean, you can make more objects. Like let's say I have a girl, and so she's also an empty object for some reason. Okay, and then we call it my function, and then call. Okay, now I can bind different objects to it. Right now girl has empty object, so I'll say a girl as my binding object, and then her name is Maria. Yeah. Okay. Now what do we get? What do we get here? Can know function. Okay. So now you can see that name. So we called the function twice into different objects, right? So we define two objects. Let person equal to empty object. Let girl equal to empty object. And then on our function call, we bind the function to those objects, right? One for person, one for girl. That's why you have the name, console log name is Joe for the first one, right? And then the default name is always Bobby for some reason. Yeah, so this much pretty it. And then second function, we have this pointing to the girl object, which we pass in the name as Maria, and then we have the name here, and then this name is Bobby because the default name here is Bobby. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of the nested function and then the relationship to this. I'm going to clean up my code a little bit. I don't think I want a default name anymore. I'm going to delete that, and then yeah, I mean this is cool. Okay, so let's look at this. So in this my function, on the original function, we're going to say this dot name equal to whatever name we pass in, and then we log out this name right here, and then say this dot name, right? Oh, okay, so let's see, did I pick it right? Okay, so what do you think is going to happen? Okay, node function, ta-da. So it console logs this dot name, right? Remember, inside here, when we call the function and with binding to the person object, and we pass in Joe as our parameter to name, right? So the name in this function is Joe, and then we set this name equal to name. All right, it's kind of a little confusing here, but let me see what's pointing to what right here. So this is pointing to the person object, which is an empty object, right? 100% clear. This is pointing to the person object, empty object. And then we say this dot name. What this is that we are assigning a property to the object, right? And the property name is name, and the value we pass in here is whatever we pass in the parameter, which is Joe, right? Even though the name is the naming convention is the same, but then like it's totally different thing because this .name refers to the person's name property. It's a property, right? Remember, an object is a key value pair. So this will be like name is Joe, like that. So this was what happened in line 4 right here. This name equal to name. So we have a name with property. I'm sorry, a property named name, and then the value is Joe. So that's what's creating inside this object. Okay, I mean creating it dynamically, so not in hard-coded way. Okay, so when we console log this, right? So we say name is equal to this dot name. Now this is also referring to the person object, correct? And then we say I want the name property of the current object of person, which we define here is name, which is Joe. Yay! And that's how we got to here. So name is equal to Joe. All right. Okay. So what if I have another function? Let's say inside this function. Okay, not a separate function. Let's say inside my function we have a function called call me. Okay, and then we have a console log calling, and then we have this dot name. Let's do that. And then we're gonna call the function inside the function, right? So kind of like an immediate call right after that. Okay, so what I am going to do in my head, right, like any normal person that we have. Okay, so this function is inside my function here, and then I've just console log calling this name. In theory, right, in my naive world, this will refer to this name right here because it's inside this function. But unfortunately, the traditional function does not work that way. So what we have here, so let's say we run the program, cannot read the property name of undefined, and we can see where's the errors coming in. So, right, the console log say calling this name is undefined. What's going on here, right? So in JavaScript, it's traditional function. You cannot, so if this is a second layer function, right? So this function is under, call me is under my function, okay? So in traditional function, this keyword cannot be passed into the next level. So what I mean by that, this dot name, right? This is referring to the person object, right? Only inside this function, and only this function only. If the next function is a nested traditional function, you're calling this is gonna point to the outside of the global object, which is in the strict mode, it's undefined. So this is undefined inside the nested function. However, thanks to ES6, now JavaScript has an arrow function which lets you have access to this object right here, okay? What I mean by that, so let's say this is the way we write the function traditionally. So sorry, call me as a function, and then call me, and then open parenthesis, and then the curly brackets, right? This is the old way of writing functions. And in order to have access to this from the parent function, my function, you can use an arrow function. Okay. So arrow function. So let's say let call me equal to a function, right? And then a big arrow function. Okay, so let's run it. My theory is correct. Okay, here we go. Right. So what happened here? We declare an arrow function, right? The arrow function name is call me, which we invoke it right here. And then it's pretty much doing the same darn thing, right? Because it's calling this name, but the only difference between the arrow function and the traditional function is that the arrow function now has access to this keyword from its parent. That's the other than it looks better than the traditional function, the arrow function has this access to the parent what you would call it, the parent function. There you go. Okay. So the beauty of these arrow functions that you can, so this is only the second level, right? This is a second function inside my function, but you can actually do more than that. You can add another function and keep using this. This is always referring back to the object itself. So what I mean by that is the let's see, we have the no. So let's say we have another function, say keep calling me, okay, and then we have a function here that says console log keep calling this name, right? Okay, got an equal sign here. Okay, so what's this doing is that, oh, we got call that function too as well. So if we invoked it right away, right? So this keep calling me functions is an arrow function that's inside call me function, and we invoke it right away. And we have a console log, keep calling this name. Now, this is like a third layer inside the function, right? So my function, the first layer, and then call me the second layer, and then keep calling me is the third layer. And they all have the same this reference, which is our person object right here, okay? And then, of course, the name is going to be Joe. So, so here we go. So after we run the file, it says name is equal to Joe from the first layer, calling Joe from call me function, and keep calling Joe from the keep calling me function here. Yeah, they're gonna yell at Joe if he doesn't pick up anymore. Okay. So that is this keyword tutorial for the function scopes, right? I explained to you what's the difference between the traditional function declaring this and then the arrow function this. The arrow function has the access to this keyword from its parent function, right? The traditional function, you don't have the access to it. Okay, so some people doesn't like the arrow function for some reason. I don't know why, but for whatever reason that you have, that you guys just decide that you don't want to use the arrow function, that's a way to pass in this keyword into the next level functions. So the way is say that, let's say we're going to declare a variable, say let self equal to this, right? So what this do? Remember the JavaScript has the closure. Well, when you declare a variable inside a function, right? Inside this the parent function scope, or the child function scope can have the access to this variable self, and you can name it whatever you want, but self is a pretty good name for this. I think in Python they use self, quite a lot. Anyways, so by doing this, you can set self to this reference to the parent function, right? And this is also referring to the object itself. Now, self is referring to the object, and then we can use it under the call me function, which is the next level functions over here. And instead of using this, we'll just say self. Okay. Now we're gonna run the function, well, run the file, and it's calling Joe, right? So that is one way you can trick around without using the arrow function to pass this keyword into the next level. Hope you guys learned something today. Also, I have other tutorials on the JavaScript, mostly JavaScript because I'm a JavaScript guy. Anyways, subscribe to my channel. There will be more content coming out soon. Thank you. See you later.